Today I'm going to give you some tips to sketch loosely. We'll be using 3 apples for example. Let's go. How do you sketch loosely? Well, I'll give you my strategies. I'll be going in with very light pencil lines, focusing on broad shape. The key scheme color-wise is yellow-purple. Some of the things I'm looking at to do would be to create soft edges as much as possible. I will be mixing the colors on paper, not on the palette. I will charge color into color, wet on wet. I'll be thinking value and let the color go crazy. So that will be the strategy going in to create this loose sketch of 3 apples. So here we go. We start by mixing a very light wash of cobalt and quinacridone roast. This is really just to indicate where the shades, the shadow area and the shaded area in the apple will be. Later on, I'll be going in with a much more darker version of the purple. Part of the intention here is also to wet the paper. Wetting the paper allows me to put all sorts of colors wet on wet with all kinds of soft edges, and that just add to the sense of a very loose sketch. So there are 2 purposes of this first wash. One, to wet the paper. The other one is to tell me where the shades or the shadows are. Here you'll see that I'm going to start putting in the complementary color yellow-brown for the background. It's always easy to go with a simple complementary color scheme. That's the easiest, and I suggest that to all beginners and beginner sketchers. And now we are ready to put in the other sets of colors. It will be light yellow, the lemon yellow, new gamboge, which is a little bit warmer, and that is to copy down or take down the areas that are lightest. You can see it on the apple. For the darkest stuff on the apple itself, I'm using permanent alizarin crimson and French ultramarine. If you look at it, I'm actually loading in, charging in into the wet on wet, taking not too much of a pigment in the brush and just dumping it down onto the wet paper, and some of them are the white side, the dry paper, especially on the lighter part of the apple. On the part where I've already pre-wet with the first wash, you will see that the colors are all melting away, and that is one of the strategy of painting loose. Just remember to read the values as best as you can. Leave a little bit of highlight or the paper white. That, if I consider it as value number 1, and the darkest dark, which is the combination of French ultramarine and alizarin crimson, as number 5, the darkest part of the painting. You should get both 1 to 5 and everything in between as well. At this point, I'm also very careful not to make green. How do you make green? Well, first, don't put the green color itself. Second, don't put yellow next to blue. Try to buffer the 2 colors with red or orange or something else. But to avoid green, don't mix the 2 colors that make green, yellow and blue. So far so good. I'm not trying to be very precise. I'm trying to use as little smallest shape as possible with each of my touches. I'm just being very careful with those colors, because if I spread too much of it, it becomes less loose and it becomes too tight in that sense. One of the key things to remember is while I'm doing this, I'm doing short, small shapes, trying to load wet on wet, letting the colors melt as much as possible. And even when they are running into each other where they are not supposed to, I kind of let it, because I think that's part of the loose feel that I'm after. One more thing, trying to avoid making green. And as you can see now, I'm putting in the darker version of the shadow, which is essentially permanent alizarin crimson with French ultramarine. I tilt it a little bit just to make the color run. I have dabbled in a little bit of cadmium yellow and cadmium orange here to make the color of the shades more interesting. Again, I'm loading in and be very conscious of what I think the values will be, so I'm trying to copy the value. as much as I can. I'm also rubbing away and softening some of the edges. This is one of the key thing about painting loose: softening edges, softening, always trying to get rid as much as possible of the hard edges, to make it feel that the whole thing is, kind of airy fairy, and edges are just bursting out into the open, if you like. I'm still sticking to my original plan, and I'm spending a lot of effort and time on softening the edges of the apples, the edges around the shadow, anywhere where I think the sharp edge or the hard edge is taking attention. So what I do is I'm just taking the attention away from those sharp edges, so that the eyes can just kind of flow around dreamily, in a sense that it is loose sketched. I'm also always constantly evaluating, taking a step back, looking at it, and see where else I can edit. You must realize at this point the painting is actually quite dry, and only some parts of it are still a little bit damp, but most of it is more or less dried up. So if I go in with a stiff brush, like the one I'm using, you can pretty much wash away or just soften up the edge quite a fair bit. You can actually get a stiff brush by taking one of those oil bristled brush and cut away or shorten the length of it. So when I'm done, I'm just gonna put down my name and the date, and I think that's it. So let's revisit the strategy. Well, first, it's a light pencil line, yellow purple is the color scheme, and soft edges, lots of soft edges, mixed colors on paper, not on the palette as much as possible, charge colors into color, wet on wet, think in value all the time, and let it go wow. So I hope you can see that I have kind of achieved what I set out to do, and I hope you have enjoyed this video. So this is Whee Teck. Stay safe wherever you are, and I hope you have a great day ahead. Bye.